The text message that shattered everything was brief, 12 words, but those words unraveled 3 years of trust. Can't wait to feel you again tonight. She's at her book club. Miss you? My finger hovered over my phone, trembling ever so slightly. I read it again as though seeing it a second time might somehow change its meaning. But it didn't. The foundation I thought was solid, built with love, compromise, and late-night talks about everything and nothing, cracked in an instant. 3 years of marriage. I thought we had it all figured out, shared laughter, dreams of a future, and even silly debates over granite versus marble countertops. The kitchen island we picked together suddenly felt colder beneath my hands as I set the phone down. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore, as if somehow the screen could make the words disappear. The quiet in the house weighed down on me as I processed the message. It was Thursday, a day that wasn't supposed to hold any secrets. But as I replayed the message, my mind churned with questions. What did this mean? Why had he done this? Was it all a lie? I was supposed to be at my book club, a tradition I'd kept for months. But today I came home early, Thai takeout in hand, his favorite pad Thai with extra peanuts. I had hoped to surprise him, ease his stress over an impending deadline. But now, everything felt like a bad joke. As I opened the front door, the house felt eerily quiet. His phone, resting on the nightstand, lit up. A notification. I wasn't the snooping type. I had never been. My parents' marriage, full of suspicion and doubt, had been something I swore I'd never repeat. But that message, something about it gnawed at me. The name that appeared on the screen, Melissa from accounting, stuck in my mind like a splinter. I froze in the doorway. How many times had he mentioned her casually? Always in passing. Always professional. But now, the casual mention seemed too deliberate. She had even sent him a Christmas card last year, something I thought was odd, but I brushed it off. Standing in our bedroom, holding his phone, hearing the shower running, I felt my chest tighten. The room seemed to spin as I weighed my options. Confront him now, wait for him to finish showering, or pretend I had never seen the message at all. The choice I made in that moment would change everything. I set the phone down exactly where I had found it, placing it gently on the nightstand, as though nothing had changed. But everything had changed. My hands trembled as I grabbed my car keys from the hook by the door. The bag of takeout sat untouched on the kitchen counter. I left a note, got called back to work, eat without me, love you, and walked out the door. I didn't go back to work. I drove, but not to the office. Instead, I parked my car under the shade of a sprawling oak tree at a park 3 blocks away. The world around me continued as usual. Children ran around. Families packed up picnics, and couples walked hand in hand, blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing in my chest. The sun began to dip lower in the sky as I sat there, trying to breathe, but the weight in my chest was unbearable. The betrayal was not just in the affair, but in the casual way he had navigated his double life. How many nights had he kissed me, his hands still warm from texting her? How many times had I mentioned my book club, giving him the perfect alibi to carry on with his secret life? I sat there, watching the world continue around me, feeling like an outsider. Time seemed to stretch. My phone buzzed with a message from him, a simple text, "Thanks for dinner. Working late tonight on the Henderson project. Don't wait up." The Henderson project? That project had been completed weeks ago. I remembered because he'd celebrated with his team at a bar downtown. I had picked him up that night, too many whiskey shots in him, and he had claimed it was because of the stress from the project. But now, I knew the truth. It wasn't stress that had kept him out late, it was her. The realization settled like a stone in my stomach. My husband, the man I had trusted with my heart, had betrayed me, and I had been blind to it. The thought made me sick. I drove back home, but I didn't walk through the door as the unsuspecting wife. Instead, I went to the living room and sat down, picking up my phone and scrolling through pictures of our wedding day, our vacations, our moments together. How had I not seen the signs? The answers were so clear now. I had been living in a lie. A beautifully constructed lie that he had built so carefully, each layer of deceit tucked neatly under another. And now, the truth was crawling out, piece by piece. The next morning, I wore the mask of the unsuspecting wife flawlessly. I made coffee, kissed him goodbye, and asked about his day ahead. Every action felt like a performance, and yet my face betrayed nothing. I had become an actress in my own life, pretending to be the woman I thought I was while everything beneath the surface was crumbling. He mentioned his mother's upcoming birthday barbecue, a big event she had been planning for months. Mom specifically asked if you could make your famous guacamole, he said, his voice casual, as if nothing was wrong. Everyone loves it. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Dorothy, his mother, the woman who had never quite accepted me, no matter how much I tried. She had welcomed me into their family, but always with a sense of subtle superiority, as if I were a second-choice daughter-in-law. I remembered the photos of his high school girlfriend that still adorned the walls of her house, pictures placed beside our wedding photo, a constant reminder that I would never measure up. That's when the thought first whispered to me, quiet, dangerous. A thought I wasn't sure I could ignore, but one that felt oddly right. Something about this moment, this event, was the perfect opportunity for me to take control. Of course, I replied, my voice betraying nothing. I wouldn't miss it for the world. As he pulled away in his car, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him yet. I wasn't going to scream, throw his clothes onto the lawn, or key his car like some cliché scene out of a bad movie. No, this betrayal deserved something more calculated, something memorable, something he'd never forget. I grabbed my phone and opened my laptop. I needed information, facts, evidence. I wasn't going to act on anger alone. I would be meticulous. I knew exactly where to start. Finding Melissa was easier than I anticipated. 4 years of marriage had made me complacent, yes, but not naive. I knew his email password, his cloud storage login, and even had his location sharing turned on, ostensibly so I could know when he was heading home from work. The digital breadcrumbs he'd left behind painted a chilling picture. As I sifted through his emails, the weight of each new discovery pressed down on me. It wasn't just one message or one conversation, it was months of deceit. Their affair hadn't started recently. No, it had been going on for at least 8 months. 8 months of lies, 8 months of him coming home late with weak excuses about client meetings and deadline pressures. 8 months of pretending nothing was wrong, all the while living a double life. I found a reservation confirmation for a weekend getaway, a weekend trip to a vineyard 3 hours away. The same weekend he had told me he was at a marketing conference in Chicago. I stared at the screen, the world around me blurring as I read through the details. The credit card statements were the final nail in the coffin. Jewelry, dinners, expensive restaurants that I had mentioned wanting to try. All of it, purchases he had made for her, using money we were supposed to be saving for our future. The worst part wasn't just the affair itself, it was the elaborate architecture of lies he had built around it. Every time I voiced a suspicion, however mild, he had made me feel irrational. "You know I'd never do that to you," he'd say, his eyes wide with fake innocence. "Don't you trust me?" Classic gaslighting. I had apologized for doubting him. I had worked harder to be the perfect wife, more understanding of his late nights, more appreciative of his dedication to his career. But now I could see it for what it was. A manipulation, a game he had been playing all along, and then I found her Instagram profile. Melissa Harper, 32, blonde, beautiful in that effortless way that made other women feel inadequate. Her feed was pristine, fitness photos, elegant dinners, exotic beaches. There was no trace of my husband, of course. They were too careful for that. But there was one photo that caught my eye. A close-up of a woman's hand holding a cocktail, a delicate gold bracelet glinting in the light. The caption read, "Best surprise from someone special. He always knows exactly what I need." I froze. The bracelet. I recognized it immediately. It was identical to one I had admired in a jewelry store window during our anniversary trip last year. I had pointed it out and he had nodded absently, commenting that it looked nice but overpriced. 2 weeks later, a charge for that exact bracelet appeared on our credit card statement. When I asked about it, he explained that he had bought it for his mother. Her birthday wasn't for another 6 months. But now I knew. As I lay in bed next to him that night, I pieced it all together. The business trips, the new gym membership, the cologne, the password on his laptop, and how he'd always taken his phone into the bathroom when he showered. The truth hit me like a tidal wave. I had been blind. I had trusted him completely. I had defended him fiercely to friends and family. And now, all of that trust had been shattered. The pain was unbearable, but I wasn't going to let it control me. Not yet, not now. The next day I was still reeling, but I kept my composure. The role I had assumed over the past few years of the perfect wife, the doting partner, was something I had grown accustomed to. But now it felt like a mask, one I had to wear to survive the next few days. So I played my part. I made his coffee, kissed him goodbye, and asked about his day ahead. He mentioned the Henderson project again, and I nodded, not missing the slight discomfort in his voice when he brought it up. How long would it take for him to realize I knew the truth? As he left, I fought the urge to rush into action. I had made a choice. I wasn't going to confront him directly yet. This was bigger than an emotional outburst. I wasn't some angry wife desperate for revenge. No, this would be calculated, and he wouldn't see it coming. I took a deep breath and focused on the next step of my plan. Melissa. I needed to ensure that my suspicions were correct. I wasn't just going to take my husband's betrayal at face value. I needed solid proof, something irrefutable. So, I took matters into my own hands. I hired a private investigator. I knew the type of investigator I wanted, not someone shady, but someone professional, someone who could dig into the truth without drama or scandal. I met her at a coffee shop about 30 minutes from my neighborhood. Her name was Ruth, a middle-aged woman with experience, and her reviews were impeccable. She understood exactly what I needed when I explained my situation. I didn't want photos of my husband in compromising positions or embarrassing public shots. I wanted facts, evidence, a timeline. Ruth assured me she'd get started immediately. You'll have preliminary information within 48 hours, she said, and she was true to her word. 2 days later, I received the results. Ruth handed me a folder thick with documentation. There were photos of my husband and Melissa entering a boutique hotel downtown during hours when he was supposed to be in client meetings. There were recordings of their conversations in public places, intimate exchanges that didn't leave much to the imagination. But it wasn't just their affair that shocked me, it was what I discovered next. Ruth casually mentioned, "You might want to take a look at your joint accounts." My heart skipped a beat. Something about her tone set off alarms in my head. That night, while he was in the shower, I sat down with our financial statements. What I found turned my stomach. Nearly $30,000 had been siphoned from our joint savings account. Small amounts at first, and then larger sums over the past year. What was he doing? I wasn't sure at first, but then I found it, a personal loan taken out 3 months ago without my knowledge. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This was not just an affair, it was financial betrayal too. He had been draining our account while stringing me along with lies. Our future, our dream home, the life we had planned, was being stolen right from under my nose. I documented everything, making sure I had copies of all the relevant bank statements, credit card charges, and loan papers. I transferred everything to a secure cloud account that only I could access. Then I called my college roommate, now a successful divorce attorney, and ran everything by her. Her advice was precise. Document everything, don't confront him yet, you'll need everything in place first. Move some of your own money to protect yourself, just enough to give you a cushion. The next day, I opened my own account. I transferred a reasonable amount, enough to feel safe without alerting him, but sufficient to ensure that I wouldn't be left high and dry when this all came to light. The financial manipulation, the deceit, it was all part of the same web of lies. But it wasn't just the affair or the financial fraud that had my mind spinning. It was his family, too, Dorothy, his mother. She had always made me feel like I was second-rate, no matter how much I tried to fit in. She had always kept a picture of his high school girlfriend next to our wedding photo, and she had introduced me as his current wife at a family gathering a few years ago. The insults were subtle, but they stung, and now they made me angry. So I came up with a plan. I wasn't going to confront him directly. I wasn't going to let him turn this into a shouting match. I was going to do something that would make sure he couldn't escape the truth. I called my mother-in-law, Dorothy. I told her I was excited about her birthday barbecue and wanted to bring a friend, a colleague of my husband's, someone who had been going through a tough time. "Oh, of course, dear," she said warmly. "The more, the merrier. Who is it?" "Melissa," I replied, my voice steady. "Melissa Harper from accounting." There was a brief pause before she answered. "How lovely, we'd be happy to meet her." And just like that, I knew I had everything in place. My husband had no idea what was coming, and I was ready. The days that followed were a strange mixture of calm and tension. On the outside, everything seemed normal. My husband and I exchanged pleasantries, talked about mundane things like the weather and weekend plans. But beneath the surface, I was quietly preparing. I wasn't going to make the mistake of confronting him too soon. No, I would let him think everything was fine, that nothing had changed. Let him believe that I didn't know the truth. The calm before the storm would be my most powerful weapon. The morning of the barbecue arrived, and I made sure to act as if nothing was amiss. I made his favorite breakfast, eggs, toast, and bacon. He kissed me goodbye and left for work, mentioning a few last-minute things about the event. As soon as he was gone, I moved into action. I had everything I needed, and I wasn't going to waste any more time. I dressed in something casual but flattering, a soft green dress, something that felt light and effortless. I had a role to play. It wasn't just about the confrontation. It was about ensuring that the truth would hit him like a freight train, in front of the people who mattered most. At 2:00 p.m., I picked up Melissa. She looked perfect, stunning in a simple yet elegant summer dress, her makeup flawless. As I pulled up to her apartment building, I could see the anticipation in her eyes. She was excited, ready to meet my family, to fit into this version of my life that my husband had so carefully curated. She had no idea what was coming. She greeted me with a bright smile, her voice warm as she stepped into the car. "So nice to finally meet you in person," I said, keeping my tone light. "My husband has mentioned you so many times." Her smile faltered slightly, as if unsure of what I was implying. I could see the tension building beneath her cheerful exterior. "He has?" she asked, her voice betraying her nerves. I smiled back, nodding. "Of course. He's always spoken so highly of you. Shall we go? He's waiting for us." Her eyes lit up at the mention of my husband, and she eagerly followed me to the car. But the moment she sat in the back seat, everything changed. The tension in the car was palpable. My husband's face, pale and anxious, stared out the window, avoiding eye contact. He hadn't expected me to bring her, and the realization was written all over his face. "Hey, you," Melissa greeted him, her voice full of the excitement she hadn't yet realized was misplaced. His reaction was immediate, a tight smile, his eyes wide, almost desperate. "Migraine," he said weakly, his voice strained. "I'm not feeling too well today." I kept my face impassive, watching as his discomfort grew. "He gets migraines when he's stressed," I explained casually, but he wouldn't miss his mother's birthday for anything. I kept up the small talk as we drove. The drive, which should have been a simple trip to my mother-in-law's house, felt like an eternity. Every word I spoke to Melissa was carefully chosen, each phrase designed to keep the pressure on my husband, to show him that I had taken control of the situation. I talked about office politics, family dynamics, and the things my husband had shared with me about their work together. It was all innocuous, but for him, each topic was a landmine, one he had no choice but to walk through. The moment we arrived at Dorothy's house, I could feel the weight of the moment. My husband's tension was palpable, and I could see the panic in his eyes as he realized there was no escaping what was about to unfold. I led Melissa inside, my hand lightly resting on her arm as I ushered her into the backyard. "Let me introduce you to everyone," I said with a smile, leading her through the crowd of family members and friends. My husband followed behind us like a condemned man walking toward his execution. Dorothy, my mother-in-law, rushed over to greet us, her arms outstretched, a martini in hand. "You must be Melissa," she exclaimed, her voice welcoming. "We're so glad you could join us. Any friend of my son's is family to me." My husband tried to interrupt, his voice panicked as he pulled my mother aside, whispering in her ear, but she was having none of it. "Nonsense," she said with a wave of her hand. "I want to get to know Melissa. Come, dear, let me introduce you to everyone." I watched as my husband's face fell, his attempts to pull Melissa aside growing more frantic. I remained close, inserting myself into every conversation, keeping a smile on my face, maintaining my role as the perfect wife, just as I had been for years. But now, the cracks were showing. He knew what was coming, and his mind was scrambling for a way out. Dinner was served, and the moment of reckoning was almost at hand. Dorothy had arranged seating with name cards, and I had ensured that Melissa was seated directly across from my husband and me. It was the perfect position for the moment when the truth would be exposed. The dinner table was set with elegance, every detail carefully arranged to create a warm, welcoming atmosphere. But beneath the surface, the tension was palpable. My husband sat across from me, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. His eyes darted between me and Melissa, panic flashing in his expression. It was almost pathetic how easily he crumbled under pressure, but he had no idea that the storm was already here. Dorothy clinked her glass, commanding everyone's attention. The sound of the chime cut through the low hum of conversation, and the table fell silent. I knew what was coming. The moment had arrived. Before we eat, Dorothy began, "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate with me today. Family means everything to me, and I'm so blessed to have you all in my life." Her eyes turned to my husband, pride shining in them. "Especially my wonderful son who has always made me so proud. And of course, my lovely daughter-in-law," she gave me a tight smile, "who has been such a perfect partner for him." Perfect. The word stung as I thought about all the ways I had tried to be perfect for him, all the sacrifices I had made to build a life with someone who didn't value it. But now, it was time to set the record straight. I slowly stood up, raising my wine glass in a controlled motion. The room seemed to freeze as all eyes turned to me. My husband's face paled, his hand gripping the edge of the table. He knew, without a doubt, what was coming. "I'd like to say something, too, if I may," I said, my voice steady. The weight of my words hung in the air. The room went dead silent, and my husband's eyes widened. His hand reached for my arm under the table, but I gently pulled it away. "Family is indeed everything," I began, my gaze meeting his mother's eyes. "And truth is the foundation of family. Without honesty, what do we really have?" I felt a rush of adrenaline as I continued, my voice calm but firm. "I've recently discovered some truths about my own family that I think everyone here should know." I could see Melissa's nervous glance toward my husband, but I didn't break my focus. I was in control now. "For instance, did you know that my husband and Melissa aren't just colleagues?" I paused, letting the words settle in the air, the tension in the room growing thick. "They've been sleeping together for the last 8 months," I said calmly, watching the color drain from my husband's face. "In fact, they spent last weekend at the Lakeside Inn while I was told he was at a marketing conference in Chicago." There was a collective gasp from around the table. Dorothy's hand flew to her pearl necklace, her eyes wide with disbelief, but I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder, sliding it toward Dorothy. The folder was thick with the evidence of my husband's lies, bank statements, email chains, and credit card receipts. "It doesn't end there," I continued, my voice steady and measured. "While discovering my husband's infidelity, I also found some interesting financial discrepancies." I turned to face Dorothy directly. "It seems your son has been embezzling from his company for over a year. These documents show transfers from corporate accounts to a personal offshore account." I slid the folder toward her. "I've highlighted the relevant transactions." The room was absolutely still. No one spoke. Melissa, now visibly pale, looked between my husband and me, the realization dawning on her. "Melissa, did you know about this?" I asked, my tone almost gentle, though my words were anything but. She shook her head, her voice trembling. I didn't know, I never, of course not." I wasn't surprised by her response. She was a pawn, just as I had been, caught in the web of his lies. But now she was learning what I had known all along. There was no such thing as innocence in this. "The worst part isn't just the affair," I said, my eyes locking with my husband's. "It's the way you made me doubt myself. Every time I questioned you, you gaslighted me, made me feel like I was paranoid, irrational. Well, now the truth is out, and there's no way you can talk your way out of this." Dorothy's expression was one I would never forget, her face twisted with a mixture of confusion, betrayal, and heartbreak. "Is this true?" she asked in a barely audible voice, looking at her son. His silence was all the confirmation she needed. "I also found something else," I added, leaning back in my chair and crossing my arms. "The diamond earrings your son gave you for Christmas, those ones you're wearing right now, were purchased with stolen company funds. You might want to keep the receipt for when they're confiscated as evidence." Dorothy's hand flew to her ears, shock and horror written across her face. "Stop this right now," my husband finally spat, his voice hoarse with anger and fear. He stood up, knocking his chair backward in his haste. I smiled serenely, looking at him for the first time in months without a trace of love or sympathy in my eyes. "Actually, I've found clarity and evidence. Lots of it, which I've already forwarded to the company's ethics committee, the board of directors, and the SEC. They should be contacting you both on Monday." The silence in the backyard was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of meat sizzling on the grill. "I've also taken the liberty of meeting with a divorce attorney," I added, turning back to face the stunned table. "Apparently, infidelity combined with financial crimes nullifies certain aspects of our prenuptial agreement. Fascinating legal territory." I reached into my purse again, pulling out a second envelope. This one I handed to my mother-in-law. This contains documents showing that your son has been systematically draining our joint savings account. The money we were saving for our future, for things like your future grandchildren's college funds, I thought you should know. Dorothy opened the envelope with trembling hands. As she read, her expression shifted from shock to something darker, something I had never seen from her before. It was disappointment, deep and unyielding. "Is this true?" she asked him again, her voice barely audible. His silence confirmed everything. I stood up, smoothing my dress as I prepared to leave. "Thank you for including me in your family these past 4 years, Dorothy. Despite everything, I've appreciated your attempt at welcoming me. The barbecue was lovely, but I won't be staying for cake." I walked around the table, stopping behind my husband's chair. He refused to look at me. "I've already moved my essential belongings out," I told him quietly. "I'll have my sister collect the rest next week. The prenup specifies infidelity as grounds for forfeiting asset protection. My lawyer will be in touch." With that, I turned and walked away from the table, through the stunned audience of family members, and toward the front of the house, where my pre-ordered ride share was already waiting, exactly on schedule.